the message behind it that really resonate with most people whose love language is gifts is like, oh yeah, I was thinking about you and I drew this thing for you. I wrote this little poem for you, or it made me think of you. I found it was in a gift card. And then there's physical touch. That's I think one of the most misunderstood one because people think it's all about sex. But physical touch means when you hold my hand and we're walking down the street, I feel really loved. I feel seen. When you hug me, it's like a lot of weight drops off my shoulder, things like that. So those are the five languages and how he categorized them.
Have you ever felt like you're giving love, but your partner isn't receiving it the way you intended? Or maybe you're the one feeling unseen, wondering, do they even care? The truth is, love isn't just about intention. It's about speaking the right language. So today we are breaking down love languages and communication styles, how to recognize them, use them effectively, and avoid common mistakes that might be holding your relationship back. Welcome to the Relationship Compact. I am Eva Asogba, your guide to love, growth, and faith. Whether you're single, dating, or married, this is a place to learn, grow, and build meaningful relationships that last. If you're ready to navigate love with wisdom, hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. I am back once again with my dear brother, Edem Asogba. If you missed our last episode, you need to check it out. Edem shared so many gems on trauma-based choosing and how our past experiences shape the way we approach relationships. Today, we're switching gears to something as powerful, love languages and communication style. This is one of my favorite topics because there's a story behind it. You maybe will hear about it, maybe not, we'll just see. One thing for sure is that we all want love and be loved. But what if the way you express love isn't the way your partner receives it? In this conversation, we'll unpack the 5 love languages, why they matter, and how to identify your own and your partner's. We're also getting into the power of communication because, let's be real, love languages mean nothing if we don't know how to listen, connect, and express love in the way that actually lands. Get ready, because this is going to be just as eye-opening. So let's break this down. What are the 5 love languages, and why do you think they are so important in relationship?
Hey, hi everyone. My name is Adam, like my sister say. Let's jump into it. What are the 5 love languages? This is a book that was published by Gary Chapman. He's been seeing a bunch of couples for a while and started noticing trends and some of what the points of contentions were. And he tried to summarize it in 5 different love languages that people usually express love or receive love by. And they are words of affirmation. That tends to be more, do you like to hear, I love you? You like to hear that, oh, you did this one great. Any kind of expression of love through words. You're doing great, you're well dressed today, and so on. Quality time, I don't care what we're doing. We can be in the bushes, we can be sitting on the couch watching Netflix or what have you. But that is how I really like to connect. That would be a quality time. You have people who like our act of service. Say, hey, honey, I fill up your gas tank. Hi, I just iron your shirt, or I dropped them at the dry cleaner for you. I'm like, oh my God, you thought of me. That's so great, wonderful. Other people is gift. Usually we hear gift and we think, oh, he wants like an expensive watch or she wants like some expensive shoes. Not necessarily. It's more about people who hear I love you through, hey, I was walking by the store and I just saw this $2 thing, bird or swan made glass sculpture. And I know you like swans because when you were a child, you used to have a pond by your house or something. This made me think of you. Here you go. It's $2. The message behind it that really resonate with most people whose love language is gifts is like, oh yeah, I was thinking about you and I drew this thing for you. I wrote this little poem for you, or I saw this quote. It made me think of you. I found it was in a gift card. It's not your birthday, but here you go, something like that. And then there's physical touch. That's, I think, one of the most misunderstood one because people think it's all about sex. But physical touch means when you hold my hand and we're walking down the street, I feel really loved. I feel seen. When you hug me, it's like a lot of weight drops off my shoulder, things like that. So those are the five languages and how he categorized them. A lot of people hear that and say, well, I like all of that. Well, obviously, we all like all of this. And some people also come back with, well, this is not scientifically backed. What's the human randomized control trial about this? That's not really what the point is. The point is we all like to receive love and give love in all these ways, but one or two are really very important. So when we don't get it that way, things go away. And like we were saying earlier, we feel like you're giving, but the other person is not receiving because there's just one or two that they really appreciate that you don't understand, and that can cause friction. And that's why love languages is so important.
That is right and on point, Adam. Is always dropping some gems. Excellent point. Now, knowing about love languages is great, but how do we actually figure out which one is yours or your partner's?
That one
What do
is
you think?
yeah, that's a great question. I remember when I was reading the book, and there was two different ways that were expressed. The first one will be the direct way. You can look back at the time when you felt the most loved. What was your partner doing? So that would be for you to figure out what's my love language. I would say, okay, look back at a time where I felt really seen, I felt loved, like the relationship was great, it was flourishing. What was the my partner doing that made that resonate? Some people look there and say, well, I don't know, it's pretty decent, but on the whole, there's nothing that stand out. Then you can use the indirect method to say, okay, when was the time where I felt like really my partner wasn't seeing me or they didn't get me or they didn't really connect, right? I felt disconnected. What were they not doing to cause that? So you can revert back into that. And then for your partner, you can have questions. And there's a bunch of games that you can play, some quizzes that you can go back and forth and play with. But on the whole, it is more like a question. Hey, when was the last time that you felt really seen? When was the period of time where you felt really like I connected with you, I saw you, you felt love? And they will have to look back and come back to you. Or you can use the indirect methods for them as well and say, hey, when was it that I thought everything was great, but you didn't feel really seen? You didn't feel like we were connecting more. What was it that was missing? And then you can get to your basic love languages. But if we want to go off a little bit, is sometimes you do that and then you figure out that you don't have one that really fits neatly into any of these categories. And that is perfectly fine. So for people who might say, well, I don't see myself in any of the love languages, that's fine. You can create your own. The basic idea of the love language is, suppose you're in university and you're like philosophy major or some kind of humanities major. Composition, history, writing, all those classes are really important. You don't care much about math and chemistry and all that. They'll have low credits. If you're spending all of your time, working in chemistry and acing those classes and you're sucking at your humanities, yeah, you're gonna have a little bit of a problem. So that's what the love language is about. It's like we all have different ways that we receive and give love. Which ways are the ones that matter most to myself and my partner? Then we communicate that way. This is a way to standardize, but I always say standardize before you customize. This is a way to standardize it. And then from that basis, you can customize to what works for you. And if you don't find yourself in any of those five, come up with your own. Have that conversation. It's a great conversation starter to say, okay, honey, I read this book. I don't get it. But there's a gem in there. A question for you, a question for me. How do we both like to receive love? How do we express love? And you get the conversation started that way.
That's excellent. What I'm hearing is you have your giving love language and you have your receiving love language,
That's
and they
right.
may not be the same.
Yep.
Yeah. And based on what you were saying, I also hear more about the couple sides. For somebody who is single, how do you find out what your love language is if you don't have a partner right now?
Ooh.
That's what I was thinking about. If I can say something, personally, there are quizzes, like you say, that you can take to figure your love language. And also, if you are currently single, maybe you were in a relationship in the past, right? You also mentioned that. Think back to those relationships and figure out When did you feel loved? What exactly did your partner do in those instances that you felt love? And also, if you are new to dating, you can also read more about the love languages, or Adam went through all the 5 love languages. You can practice them on yourself, right? Spend quality time with yourself, for example. Take yourself on a date to buy a gift for yourself. I don't know how you're going to do the physical touch. But most of them, you can try to practice that on yourself and see which one resonates more with you. Adam, you have another take on what our single counterpart can do in this?
Yeah, absolutely. This translates, right? How do we even get the love languages to begin with? It's something that we either received or were starved of as kids. So if you're trying to figure it out, you can go back to growing up. How did you connect with your parents then? How you connecting with your parents now? And to give you more clues, also, you can also look at friendships and work relationships, right? Like in friendship, that's where the communication style also comes in. In friendships, it's like, hey, how do I connect with my besties? Is it more like let's hang out? Is it more like yo when they send me a little note, or like do we compliment each other outfit? Yo, you killed that. Is that what it is? Is it like a small gift? Like I have a friend where we have a joke about um what do you call it? We get the Chinese store. They have I'm blanking out on the name. But every time I go to the store and I will see that food item, I'll take a picture and send it to her. So that's like a little inside joke, right? The spring rolls, that's what it is. For the
Oh,
spring roll, I'll take a picture, I send it to her, and that's like an inside joke. We can find those little clues of how you like to express, how you connect with other people. You just like to chat, you like to go somewhere, you know, do you like more of when you meet your friends, you guys hug or do you dab or how do you or do you just be like, what's up? So those are all clues, right? If you are more of a physical touch person, you more like shake hands, hug, and so on. So there are clues all over the place. My mentor always says how you do anything is how you do everything. So in this case, that does apply because you're one person and how you show up in different situations still have flavors of that one person that you are. So,
right.
you can look for clues wherever you have relationships, and we have plenty of those.
Excellent. Tip is, if you're unsure, just observe how you naturally express love to others, or what makes you feel good, what makes you feel love. So let's say that you figure out your love language, but your partner does not speak the same language. They speak a completely different one. That can create a lot of frustration, right? So what advice do you have for couples struggling to connect because their love language doesn't match?
So the first thing is congratulations, you're human. There is no way that the probability that two people from totally different backgrounds and different upbringings meet, get together, and just have the same exact everything is zero. And you don't want to be this. If two of you are the same, then there's one too many people. It's normal to be different and actually enriches the relationship, and it's actually good that both of you are different. So if you're feeling that frustration, that's normal. That's how it is for everybody, and that's how it should be. So that should take off the weight of, oh yeah, we have to be the same. I thought love was enough once we connected with soulmates and everything. Yeah, sure. That's in the books and in movies, it works. But when it comes to real relationship in the real world, it's gonna be different. It's gonna be some conversations to be had. So if you're feeling that, that's fine. That's a good point of departure. That's where you begin. But then that's when you sit down and have the conversations, right? First, you must introspect, sit down, figure out your own, or you can do it together. And then you have the conversation in a very calm and collected manner. You sit down, you agree on, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And the goal is we are both tag teaming against the obstacle of disconnection. Right, so if you're working together to solve the issue of disconnection or trying to increase the level of connection, it works better. Because sometimes when you start doing that, it becomes like if you guys are opposed to each other. The other is not the adversary. The other is your partner in trying to fight the problem of disconnection or feeling unloved. And assume best intention because the other person is just looking for love. looking to be loved and they feel like they're doing everything. So do you. So understanding that, assume the best intention, knowing that you guys are working together towards a common goal helps. And then from there, we can have honest conversations about, hey, do you know last time when you went and just cleaned the car and fill up the tank and you came back, I was like, oh my God, like butterflies, it felt so great. I was like, oh my God, I love this guy, girl, whatever. And it's like, oh my God, really? Yeah. And positive reinforcement works better than say, do you know that time when I brought this bouquet for you and you didn't even say, thank you? I want to have your head. That doesn't really help, you know? But if you go encourage the good thing that the person is doing, say, give me tangible examples, and this is the pattern. For me, it feels like in this season, like we also say last time, right? Season 10, it's like we just had a baby. It's a lot of work. So I think the best way that we should express love to each other is act of service. Like we are both gonna do the 5 hours of sleep or 4 hours of sleep. Things shift, things change. We need to reprioritize different things. Let's sit down and talk about it.
That's good. I mainly heard as well that love language is not something that is static, depending on where you are in your relationship or where you are just as a human being, it may change. You mentioned about how now we just had a baby and now you may not value quality time like you did before. Maybe act of service is not your love language. So this is so good. All this also ties into communication, like you already alluded to, because even if you know your partner's love language and but your communication styles are different, it can still cause issues. So we want to talk about what roles communication play in making love languages actually work. So, Adam, what advice do you have to couples struggling to connect through different communication styles?
I don't know about advice. I have experience and ideas that I can share. And if something works, take it. Something doesn't work, throw it out the window. That's usually how I tackle these subjects. I think in terms of communications, it's kind of parallel to the love languages, right? If I like direct communication, for someone who likes more indirect communication, it might feel a bit aggressive or abrasive, and they're gonna push back, pull back. But for someone who has indirect communication, they can annoy someone that has a direct communication in terms of say, well, why didn't you just come out and say what you want instead of playing this weird game, right? So again, assuming best intention, have a lot of grace for the other person, and understanding where the fit. That way you can translate them better. Because we use the same words, we don't mean the same thing, right? I typically have more indirect communication style. If I tell you, well, maybe you should consider that, or I don't think this is gonna, yield the result that you want it to yield. What it means is don't do that. That's not gonna end up well. For somebody else who hear that, if they have a more direct communication and say, well, he wasn't sure. So, you know, he mentioned it might not end well, but I don't really know. He didn't tell me not to do it, right? Or something like that, and that can cause friction. So knowing the other person said, "Oh, this person is more direct," for instance, and when they say something, they're not mean or like really coming at you. They're not trying to attack you. It's just how they talk. And for the other person too, like if you talk to someone who's direct, give it to them straight. Don't beat about the bush. Just tell them, And personally, I have to learn to do that too. And that's just one aspect of it. Another aspect might be how you think, right? Typically, I think in matrices. So I will see connection between this and that, this and that, this and that, this and that. When I start talking to someone who's more like think in categories and more linear. It's like, okay, this category and this is the relationship, this category, this is the relationship. When I'm throwing the matrix at them, they look at me like, right? And that really caused some issues at work. So I have to take a step back and say, okay, my aim is to is for what I'm saying to land with you. And if I'm not doing that, I'm not really communicating, right? It's a two-way street. Some people say, "Oh, I communicated, the judge don't listen." Yeah, if it doesn't land, you haven't communicated yet. You talked, right? So when it lands, then you know you communicate. So you have to kind of see the other person, and it helps if you work with them or you guys are in a long-term relationship. You can get like the broad strokes of, okay, they tell me this way, that way, okay. When I say it this way, it resonate better. So you have some trial and error, but it helps both at work and at home, personal relationship, professional relationships. If you know you're talking to accountants, you better have like straight figures. This ties to that, and this is where you can find it in the book of records, your ledger. If you're talking to P&A people, they might not care so much. So depending on the audience, you have to tailor the message to achieve the same goal, right? So the goal is I want what I'm saying to land with you, and I want to be able to translate what you're saying so it lands with me. So that's the only way we have in communication. Otherwise, you just shouting in the void, I'm just shouting in the void, and nobody's hearing each other.
Mhm.
So it's like translate, find the other person's style, try to customize the message so that it lands, and then things should go well from there.
That's excellent. That made me think about a video I was watching where the woman was upset with her husband, but instead of directly saying something is wrong, she was busy ignoring him the whole day, doing all sorts of chores in the house. And mind you, this man is not even realizing anything was happening,
Exactly.
right? For him, it's a normal day. Somebody says that men don't like to talk a lot. They talk when they have something important to say. But we women, we talk when we have somebody important in front of us, right? So our communication styles can be very different. I guess the bottom line is learning your partner's communication style. That can also translate into act or service, if you will, right?
Right.
Another thing is the tone. Sometimes it's not what we say but how we say it. That's what they say, right? So the tone, how do you talk to that person, how they receive it best is like you said, it's not so much just talking and talking, but are they receiving it? That's so
Right.
important. And if I can say something, the book of Proverbs say that the power of life and death is in the power of the tongue, right? So we want to speak life into each other. We want to correct each other, but in love, right? So
Yeah.
that's very good. Now that now one of the most overlooked part of communication is listening. We hear people, but do we actually listen to them, right?
Mm,
So, what do you think, or how do you think active listening, sorry, strengthen relationships?
I think active listening is like one of the most important things in terms of communication and relationship building. Because when people don't feel heard, nothing else matters. Like that used to say like students are like buckets of water. Once you can't connect with them, it's like you close the lid on it and then you have the faucet open, nothing gets in. You have to first have that connection, have the person feel heard, then you can communicate. There's another adage that say people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And one of the best way for anybody to know that you care is to let them know or to show them that they are heard, they are seen by you. So active listening is like one of the most important thing. And how do you do that? There's a few ways. First is to figure out. There's a few techniques. First is to try to still mend the other person's perspective. Right? If someone is if you guys are talking and someone says something, are you able to make a stronger case for what they're saying? That's one quick test. Another quick test is, can you repeat back to them what they say and would they agree with you? So you can play those games of when someone says something, you can go with, oh, sounds like this, sounds like that, or you can say, what I'm hearing is this and that. Is that right? Is that what you were trying to say? So that's one of the easiest way to try to make sure I'm actually listening to you. And like the indirect way is if I find myself waiting to respond, I'm not really listening. Right? And in the communication, you can watch the clock. If I'm dominating the conversation, then I'm not really even hearing anybody out. So am I hugging the mic? Am I giving people opportunity to express themselves? And once they express themselves, did I really capture what they were saying? Can I repeat that back to them? And even more, now can I make a stillman and support their argument even better? That way, you're actually listening. And if you can do all those things, yeah, the other person will really feel heard. And oh, that makes me think of obviously tangents, right? Something that Chris Williamson said is the idea of reverse charisma is after you talk to someone, you don't want to be around people where you feel like they're the best people in the world or like the coolest, the smartest people. You want to hang out with people that make you feel like you're the coolest, the smartest in the world. And people who have reverse charisma have mastered that active listening piece of it. And when you're with them, you just feel like so heard, so seen. And it's like fireworks all over the place. So that's what active listening can do for your relationship. And put wood in the fire and stoke the flames of love, if you will.
That's so good. I heard something that you said feedback. What I'm
Yes.
hearing you say is make sure you guys are on the same page because we can sit here and have like hours of talking and nobody listened or nobody understood anything that just happened. So that is so good. So let's bring all this together, right? Adam, can you share an example of a relationship that was completely transformed once love languages were truly understood and applied?
Not to be a dead horse or cabbage, but I'm going to use my own example again, where one of the things that I didn't understand about my wife is that she's a very direct communicator. And when she's talking or elaborating on a subject, she has a lot of energy. And for me, being an mostly indirect communicator, I can flex these days. Well, naturally, more of an indirect communicator is like, oh, are you fighting with me? What did I do? But I had to understand, no, it's just passion. Like being able to translate the other person's communication. She's not abrasive, she's just passionate, right? So understanding that was like transform everything. So if she comes to me or we're talking and she's like really fired up about something, in my head I go passion instead of be like, I don't know, is she angry? Did I do something? It's more like passion. So now I have the code to translate. So there's that click in my head and there's no apprehension on my hand or anything anymore. Everything is smooth. And like another example would be at work where like the older thing, earlier thing that I was saying, when I'm thinking in matrices and I'm throwing a bunch of this connected this, and then when you look at that, look at this, and then you check here, you check that. You have someone join the company new and join the team is like, that's too much information. Slow down. And so I had to like take a step back and go, I think I'm being useful. I want to be helpful, but I'm not doing that. So what can I change? So try to observe the person, how they talk, how they organize their information, and then figure out, oh, they think more in this category, that category. Things have to be laid out a little differently. So from there, I switch how I communicate with them. So every time we talk now, it's more clear cut. So I can have the matrix in my head all I want, but then I have to organize it for them. And things were like much better after that. It was completely transformed, as you said. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's super important to try to translate the other person,
Right.
and always ask for feedback. I was like, hey, I'm trying to make sure we're on the same page on this, and it feels like there's a little bit of friction. Is that the same on your end, or establish the goal? I want us to have better communications, and I appreciate your feedback. Am I doing something wrong, or is there anything I could be doing better to help us communicate in a more effective way? Because I've been feeling a little more friction. I'll give an example, and then they will explain, oh no, it wasn't that. So now I have even more data to be able to translate what they're saying. It only gets better in the future because now I have better framework to say, okay, so this is what that means, and always keep that communication going because people change, you change, you never know. Always, always ask for feedback. And when you get the feedback, act on it. Otherwise, it's just words. Next time you say, give me your feedback, the person will be like, don't think so. You didn't do anything with it last time.
Right. Well, that's so good. I think a lot of people can relate to that. At the beginning, I mentioned there is a story behind my passion or my love for this topic. I realized after one of my relationship ended, that we had mismatched love languages, right? So while I was busy, trying to spend time together, trying to ask when are we meeting, when are we doing things together. The man on the opposite side was giving me a lot of compliment and doing things for me that I didn't ask for, right? So that translates into my love language is quality time, and he's more like act of service, or what's the other one?
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation, right? And we were busy trying to love each other in our own love languages without having that communication. And it led to a lot of frustration in that relationship. And we both felt like the other person did not love us back. But it was a matter of sitting down and understanding the other person's love language and their communication style and all this. So this was so good. So before we wrap up, let's leave our audience with a final takeaway. Do you have any final thought that you want to share with our audience today on this specific topic?
Yeah, it sounds like your relationship was a classic case of being a human. So if I have any final thoughts, it will be if you're having some frustration with that, or if you feel like you're doing everything you can, but the other person is not seeing it, or vice versa, welcome to the human race. It's normal. That's how it's supposed to be. That's a good starting point. And then from there, grab the book, watch a YouTube video, summarize it, have a conversation about, hey, with you first, like when was the time period where I felt really seen, I felt loved, or and what was my partner doing, or what was the other person doing to make me feel that way, or when did I feel least seen, least love, and what was missing there, and ask the question of the other person. If you feel like I don't fit neatly into any of these categories, that's fine. We standardize before we customize. You might be steps ahead in the customization phase. Create your own love language. The conversation is still very important, whether you fit in this five or not. The conversation of how do I like to, how do I best receive love in this season? Again, it changes. How would you like me to show you that I love you in this season? And let's talk about when it changes, right? How do you communicate? How do I communicate? How can we make sure our communication is more effective? Because again, so we're partnering in this thing called life. You're not the enemy. I am not the enemy. We want the best for us. So I would say that is, if I would leave anyone with anything, I think that would be the main points to keep coming back to and remembering and trying to live according to, if you will.
That was so good. And what I will add to that is if you are single currently, know your love language, right? Like I said earlier, practice it on yourself. See what you like. Reflect on previous relationship. This can also help you date more intentionally. And if you're already in couple, love languages can shift, right, over time, like we mentioned earlier. What work in a phase might not necessarily be needed in the next phase or may need adjustment when you are in a marriage. Communication and understanding are always needed in human relationship. So have a love language check-in with your partner every few months to make sure you are still meeting each other's need. So that will conclude our session today. So love is just not about intention. It's about making sure the other person receiving the end actually feels it, right? If this conversation helps you today, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and share with someone who may need to hear it. So what is the hardest love language for you to give or receive? It's a good question because that's something I have to learn from previous relationships. So drop your answer in the comment. Follow-ups for more deep conversation on love, growth, and faith. Again, thank you so much, Aiden, for taking the time to join me again today. If you want to connect with him, again, I will drop his IG handle in the description. See you next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
it's my pleasure. Bye.